has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have a car stopped in 10th and Ranch by Kohlberger.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, and I want to wish everyone tonight a very, very happy Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2023. I hope you took care of your significant other with a special day, chocolates, flowers, however you show your affection, take them out to dinner. Well, if you're out to dinner, I hope you're watching us. But I want everyone to have a wonderful Valentine's Day, especially all the Police Off the Cuff family, our subscribers, our friends, our fans. We really hold you deep and close to our heart. You know, tonight, folks, we're going to talk a little bit more. It seems like almost every possible thing's been covered on the Idaho quadruple murder case. But however, new things keep coming out, or at least not necessarily new evidence or new stories that you haven't heard, but a new way of looking at things, perhaps. And one of the things that we're hearing about of late is that DM, who is, of course, the roommate, one of the surviving roommates, one of the reasons it's being said now, and I'm not sure if I 100% buy this reason, is that she thought that she had heard noise upstairs, but there was a loud party going on, and she thought nothing of it. So you can imagine. Of course, this was a loud party house, had a history of that. And then when she had some male walk by her, the one with the bushy eyebrows, she didn't think anything of it. She didn't think that it was anything out of the usual. But we're going to go explore that a little bit more and explore some other little pieces of evidence that are starting to drip out there just slowly, because as we know, the case has sort of slowed to a crawl because of a gag order issued by the judge. And until that gag order is either released or we get closer to June 26th, which is going to be the first day of the probable cause hearings, which may number 5 in number. There may be 5 days of hearings on the probable cause. Until that time, we're sort of relying on what maybe Ashley Banfield refers at sources close to the investigation, which I do not totally trust at all. I don't trust it at all, to tell you the truth. But it seems that there's been leaks in this case right from the very beginning. I know that there were FBI agents going on a lot of the broadcast stations from the very beginning, and they had information that we didn't have. And it turned out in the beginning it was referred to as rumor. But these rumors, guess what? They turned out later on to be very true. So I think that certain law enforcement people have leaks inside this investigation, and perhaps News Nation is getting some of these leaks and doing shows on that, and which we in turn are using some of that information, but trying to vet that information by qualifying it by saying, we don't take this information to be 100% accurate. But as you know, again, we'll get back to the gag order. There's no real new information coming out. So we're going to do as best we can and use our knowledge and our experience to dissect some of the things and some of the pieces of evidence and some of the things we know about law enforcement and the prosecution of murders and the collection of evidence. We're going to use all of that, and we're going to try to give you the best possible show we can. Joining me tonight is retired NYPD detective and straight out of Brooklyn, Phil Grimaldi. How you doing tonight, Phil?
I'm doing pretty good, Billy, and I want to wish a very happy Valentine's Day to all our subscribers, our fans, and our friends. Without you guys, there would be no Police Off the Cuff. Thank you for being our loyal fans, and hope everybody's having a great night.
And if you guys are in Brooklyn, Phil sends out cannolis to his Valentines, but
that's right.
he can't afford all that postage to send it.
Put
all
a little
over the world.
heart on it.
With a little heart on. That's right. And also tonight, we have retired NYPD Sergeant and a recent fan favorite, uh, Professor Michael Geary. How you doing tonight, Mike?
Good, Billy. Thank you for having me on.
It's
doing,
always a
Mike?
pleasure.
Phil.
And Phil, I'm going to go to you first. You heard what I was talking about, that
Yep.
the roommate DM, who's one of the surviving roommates, and now that this new sort of theory that she thought there was a party upstairs and that she didn't put two and two together, that something horrendous had happened, and that's right now what they're saying. What do you think?
Well, right off the bat, Billy, I don't like leaks in any type of investigation or any case. And when there's a gag order in place, I would hope it's strictly adhered to. However, with this particular leak, DM allegedly told investigators that she heard noises. She was trying to sleep and she opened her door, which was closed, and she called out to the other roommates, "Calm down. You're being loud. I'm trying to sleep." She closes the door and then locks it. Now, obviously, this is allegedly. We don't have this coming from law enforcement sources. This was broadcast by Ashley Banfield's show and other news outlets. And then after hearing more noise, she opens the door a second time and she allegedly sees the killer. He walks past her and exit through the rear sliding glass doors. Now, she described the killer as being clad in black clothing and a mask. She goes back to bed, apparently waking up several hours later, and that's when they discover the victims in the case and they call 911. Now, based on what we knew about DM prior to this being leaked, now, if it's true, to me, it sounds like the most logical explanation that could be, put forward regarding the lack of the period of time and the lack of calling 911 in a timely fashion. There's about an 8-hour period of time where the murders take place and the police aren't called until 11:57 in the morning, I believe it is. So it's from a little after 4 in the morning to a little before noontime, about 8 hours. Now, I've said before, the only person that can answer that question is DM. And if this is true, I like this scenario best. Obviously, it's a Saturday night going into a Sunday morning. It's a frat house type atmosphere. We know what kids do in college on a Saturday night. They drink. So if you take all of the components of what we know previously, there were 2 different times when police were called. We saw the body camera video from the body-worn cameras on the police officers that responded. It appeared that there was loud parties going on. It appeared that there were many people in the house. So again, for her to mistake loud noises, and obviously we know now that it was the loud noises of possibly a killer fight between the killer and the victims. And I'll say it was BK because I do believe that he was the killer in this case. So it could be mistaken for party noises. She sees a person clad in a dark clothing with a mask. Perhaps she thinks it's some type of a prank. Again, she could have been half asleep, maybe intoxicated. All of those things do sound very logical to me. Now, I know, Billy, you said you don't put a lot of validity into this story based on where it's coming from. It's being leaked, and I get that. But again, the conspiracy theories ran wild in the beginning when, everybody said, "Oh, the roommates are involved. The roommates are involved. They didn't call the police for 8 hours." I think that this is probably the best scenario that's been put forward regarding that period of time where the police weren't called.
Mike, same question.
Yeah, Phil's right. It's probably the fact that because she's, DM and the other roommate, I think BF, this is a party house. There's a lot going on weekends. There's a lot of fun. They got home earlier than Mogul and everyone else and Gonsalves, and they probably were woken up by noise. Now, some of the noise that they could have heard was them coming in, maybe someone having TikTok video on. It could have been that sort of thing. But the stories now about thinking it's a party, I don't see that as derogatory in any way towards DM. That would not be unusual for a party. So yeah, for a kid who's woken up in the middle of the night after they've been asleep for maybe an hour or two and they've had a lot to drink and they hear noises, they might be saying, "Yeah, look, please, guys, hold it down. Go right back to bed." I could understand that. It's nothing derogatory. or negative about her. That was her perceptions. If in fact that's true, I don't have any problem with it whatsoever, and I don't think it says anything bad about BK. I'm sorry, the
DM.
DM
DM.
or BF at all, and it's probably the most logical explanation, and that's it.
Well, Mike, I'm going to play a little bit of this video. We'll shed a little more light on it.
The roommate, referred to as DM in the probable cause affidavit, told the source that she thought noises she heard were from people in the house partying late into the night. The house on King Road was known for having lots of people in and out at all hours. 4 people were stabbed to death inside of that home in November, where 2 roommates actually survived. Now, DM, one of those roommates, told police that she opened her bedroom door at one point and saw a man walking by her wearing all black and a mask. She told the source that she thought he must be a guest of one of the other roommates. He walked right past her and she locked herself in a room. Now, no one called 911 until lunchtime the next day. Police ended up arresting Brian Kohlberger, a doctoral student at nearby Washington State University, more than a month after the murder, saying he was the man who committed the brutal stabbings. DM's memory now seems to be a bit different from what she told investigators, because in her latest recollection, she wasn't frightened by the random man in the hallway. But you know what? Memory can be a tricky thing. So we spoke with an expert about how memories can change over time.
Well, you don't need a PhD to know that.
You know, I just want to mention something to you. This is true. Memories do change. However, what's most important is how you remember it the day you raise your right hand in a court of law and testify that what you say is the truth, all the truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God. That is the most important thing. However, the credibility of a witness can be severely impinged by the fact that whatever statement she made is memorialized right now on paper, the state, and signed off on in her handwriting by her. So will that statement that was taken by the police on the day of the murders and the testimony she undoubtedly will give when this case goes to trial, will that jive? And that's what is a big question.
That as time passes, our memories begin to fade. They become weaker. But what's not so much a matter of common sense is that weakening memory that's fading with the passage of time becomes more and more vulnerable to potential contamination. And contamination can happen when you get suggestive information from other sources. If you're questioned in a biased or leading fashion, if you overhear other people talk about what happened, it can affect you. But we also can alter our own memories. That's called autosuggestion. We think about what might have happened, what probably happened, what could have happened, and sometimes those what could have become what did.
And we've also learned that suspect Brian Kohlberger was experiencing some workplace drama around the time of the murders. He was apparently fired from his position as a teaching assistant at WSU. News Nation.
I don't want to move on to that yet. I want to talk about this. So,
Billy, could I make a quick point about what we were just talking about? There was a law enforcement source that was unnamed, but early on, and said that the delay in notifying the police puzzled investigators, and they believed it to be an issue of intoxication or fear. Now, that was a statement that was put out pretty early on by an unnamed law enforcement source. So again, they were putting that intoxication and fear factor into the the realm of possibilities from early on.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things have changed. That's why I'm not, until we get what really the story is and the correct story coming from the horse's mouth, from the police department, from the investigators, from the district attorney's office. And there's people in the chat right now that said, hey, the police have put out misinformation too. And I don't look, in the beginning of this case, there was tons of misinformation because too many people were talking to the press and there wasn't one single communicator for law enforcement till Chief Fry took that role later on. But before he took that role, there was a lot of conflicting information, a lot of correct from whoever said that in the chat, a lot of misinformation. Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, Billy, I'm not really worried about the slight differences in what DM might have talked to the police about and their impressions. Yeah, obviously she was probably hungover from the effects of intoxication, and what she told the police, she was in shock because they got there a short period of time after the bodies were discovered. So in the excitement and everything else, she's going to make statements, and they're recorded. Later on, when they talk to her, the statement is probably maybe a little bit better, a little bit more coherent, and that's really no problem. The only problem I would see is if between the now and then the probable cause hearing, and then at the trial, if there's a huge total sea change in what DM would say. But I don't see the prosecutor having a problem with putting DM in front of the judge in a probable cause hearing or at the trial and going over her prior statements and letting her explain what she was thinking at the moment and how she processed it. And the leaks, unfortunately, fuel speculation, and that's unprofessional, and that shouldn't have happened at all.
Someone in the chat just said, so it's okay to wait 8 hours as long as you were in shock. No, I don't think it's okay.
No.
I'm not saying it's okay to wait 8 hours.
No.
If what she's saying is true, then she didn't understand that there were murders in the house. I don't totally buy that. I'm with you, MK, in the chat. I'm not totally buying that. So is it okay? No, if you know your roommates are murdered, no, it's not okay to wait 8 hours for anyone that potentially could have been murdered. But if we believe what she's saying, and I'll play another video here, that she believes that there was a big party going on.
Tell you, it certainly does give a little bit more perspective as to why she didn't call 911 right away, perhaps. We're told that Dylan actually mistook the noises that she'd been hearing. Remember, the affidavit said that around 4 a.m., she could hear some noises up on the third floor, thought it was maybe, Kaylee playing with the dog, Murphy, didn't think a lot more than that. But ultimately, a few moments later, she heard a lot of noises. She opened her door and effectively kind of yelled out to her roommates, calm down, like cut it out, keep it down. You guys are being loud. I'm trying to sleep. It's late. Thinking that there were roommates horsing around, that perhaps all that noise that she was hearing was just them, being boisterous and still in party mode. It was late Saturday night, early Sunday morning. So she then closed her door and went back to bed, but within minutes, perhaps sort of roused again by noise, opens the door again, was going to say something again to the effect of, keep it down already. It's the middle of the night. And that's when she sees the figure coming towards her. Now, this has been a big bone of contention for a lot of people. Why, if you saw some shadowy, terrifying figure walking towards you, would you just close your door and go back to bed and not call the police? And the characterization to the source who spoke directly with her after the murders is that she didn't think that figure was anything.
She's saying he didn't think it was anything but someone that was leaving the party that had been upstairs partying with the rest of the students. So whether we buy this or not is, I'm not sure I do, but this is a bone of contention here. Let me remove this from the screen. Do we believe that? Do we believe that she really thought that this was just a party, that this was someone that had been at the party upstairs?
Is it possible? I think it is quite possible. Do I believe it? I don't believe anything until I hear it from the person that's going to make the statement, or if it comes from law enforcement. So again, we have to take everything with a grain of salt. That person that made the comment in the chat saying that it's okay to wait 8 hours because you're in shock. No, obviously not. But a lot of things may not be as they appear. For instance, Hoodie Guy. When Hoodie Guy video was released by the food truck, a 10-second clip of Hoodie Guy in the very early stages of this case showed someone looking very, very suspicious to both you and I, Bill, and I'm sure to you, Sergeant Mike, when we saw the full context of the video, then it appeared he was interacting with people and he walked off, and it didn't seem quite as suspicious as it did with that just 10-second clip. That was something that was taken out of context. So again, if we don't know what she told investigators when she was interviewed, we can assume, wow, this 8-hour period, oh, all of these other conspiracy theories can, grow out of that. But unless you had what she said to the investigators in front of you, then that might satisfy you. And the police seem to have been satisfied very early on to say that they didn't believe her, DM, or the other roommate were involved in the murder.
Folks, just so you know, I've supervised hundreds and hundreds, probably 200, 300, 400 murders. And I've watched some of the best detectives take statements from people. And I've read the statements and I've signed off on the cases. And if you ever take a statement from someone, the truth doesn't come out immediately. It has to be gone over and gone over and gone over. Sometimes the detectives use a technique of starting at the end and coming back to the beginning, because it's very difficult to lie if they use that technique. There's all different types of interviewing and interrogation techniques. However, once they do take the statement, it's not done in like 10 minutes or 45 minutes. It takes hours and hours to take an accurate statement. And the statement is gone over and over, and it's read back to the person that gives the statement. And any inaccuracies or anything that the person that gives the statement wants to change, the detective has them initial where they want the change to be made, and the change is made. So it's a defense attorney could argue, oh, what's these initials? That's the initial of the witness saying that wasn't accurate, and I changed it to this, and this is accurate. I just wanted that to be known that I didn't change that the witness changed that. So one effort's gone over and gone over and gone over. Hopefully at that point you have the accurate information. But look, this is a crazy case, and what did the detectives find out? What we're getting a lot now of, and people are asking in the chat, oh, when did this just come out? Some of this stuff is coming out unofficially. It's coming out by sources close to the investigation. So can we depend on that? I don't think so. Mike, what do you think?
You're going to, as you, me and Phil know, when you get a homicide scene or some violent criminal act that takes place, some of the people are going to be in shock. And she was probably interviewed, obviously, very early on. The moment the police got there, the police are going to ask preliminary questions. What's going on? Who called? What did you see? She made statements. This is what I know. The officer probably recorded it in his memo book. The detectives are going to come talk to her again. And at that point, that's when Bill, you get in there, and Phil, you get in there, and you start going over the scenario, what they saw, what they heard, what times, what did they perceive, why do they do certain things, and that statement is going to be maybe an hour or 2 or 3 hours or 4 hours after a patrol officer or patrol sergeant like me has gotten on the scene and actually have gotten some sort of quick preliminary indications from the witness. It just seems rather strange, and I think it's strange too. But considering the late night, the reputation of the house, the intoxicants that were consumed, it does seem strange. But I don't think that there's anything nefarious that the two surviving roommates engaged in whatsoever at all.
There's another piece of evidence that we're hearing about now that we heard about, but it's getting more of a life to it. And that, of course, is the Bluetooth speaker in Kaylee Gonsalves in her room. And did Brian Kohlberger's phone connect to that, either on the mornings of the murder or in the prior times, the 12 times that he was reconning the house? Did his phone somehow connect to her Bluetooth, to her Wi-Fi? And that is pretty damn powerful evidence. I mean, especially if it connected the mornings of the murder, that would be, to me, extremely, extremely. when you talk about it, oh, if it was in the recon, an attorney can say, oh, he was just driving around the neighborhood, around the same house. But again, an attorney could create doubt with that. Phil?
Billy, the way that these Bluetooth speakers work, once you turn them on, they send the signal out that any Bluetooth enabled device can now connect to it. Now, if you have your cell phone turned on to where it's in auto connect mode, you just have to be within the range of that Bluetooth enabled speaker and your phone will automatically connect. I believe Wi-Fi works the same way. Now, I know that on my cell phone, I had an incident where I accidentally put it where I would connect to any local Wi-Fi, whatever I was near. And I was in the gym one day and I was getting spotty service. And it turned out it was because there were so many people in the gym and the Wi-Fi connection wasn't good. I wound up taking that off on my phone and I just went right into cellular service and I was able to connect. So again, a lot of times you could accidentally put your phone in that mode where it'll automatically connect. I believe that might be what Mr. Gonzalez was talking about when he said that BK's phone was picked up on the Wi-Fi in the house. So that might be one of the technical parts of the circumstantial evidence in this case. Whether it was on the recon or the night of the murder is still unclear. We do know that he did shut his phone off, although certain phones, even in the off mode, might be able to tap into a cell site at different times intermittently. That's something very technical. I don't want to comment on that because I'm not an expert in that field, but I do remember seeing something on the news about that. Even in the off mode, certain phones, I believe like iPhones, can still send out a signal every now and then as long as there's some kind of a charge in the battery, even with the phone off.
Dog, on the other hand, Murphy, was put into Kaylee's room, most likely by the killer, and closed into that room and discovered there by the police. So our source, who has intimate knowledge of this investigation, told us about this Bluetooth speaker. And if you do some of the digital math, if Brian Kohlberger took his phone into that house, and he very well may have, if he's the killer, he may have thought himself so darn clever that just putting it on airplane mode would mask everything, shut off every single digital piece of footprint. It's on airplane mode. Nobody can see me now. Unless, of course, it reached out to a Bluetooth device. If there were a Bluetooth device nearby, which now we know there was. So I've got a lot of reporting on that, and I've got an expert who's going to walk you through all the steps of why that may or may not work. But the key here is may. It just may. So that's just one more critical piece of a prosecution's case. Because if you lose one and you only have one, you may lose it all. Bloody glove. If it don't fit, you must acquit. All sorts of stuff like that happens in a case. The most critical piece of evidence can be denigrated, and a jury can be convinced, maybe not reasonably, but they can be convinced that it's not good evidence. So the more the merrier, you might say. A couple of things that you should know as well. There's something called a handshake that devices actually give out. And when you put your device on airplane mode,
This is tremendously interesting. The handshake. I didn't know any of this, and I think it is really powerful evidence. So let's just listen to a little more of this.
doesn't mean you can't connect to Bluetooth. You're not going to reach out to the Wi-Fi. You're not going to reach out to the cell towers, but you can reach out to Bluetooth, and you might not even know it's happening. So if Kohlberger were driving around in that Elantra, switching it to airplane mode as he got out of Pullman and felt as though it was still in airplane mode as he pulled into Moscow, and still in airplane mode, perhaps in his hip pocket as he walked into that house, we got news for you. There's action. Those things actually don't stay dormant. And here's something critical. Early in this investigation, in the first, week plus, when we were still getting public news conferences, the Northwest Public Broadcasting reporter named Lauren Patterson was sitting in the press corps, and she asked a question of the authorities who were conducting the news conference. And man, oh man, did that girl have insight to ask a clever question. Have a look.
Curious if the Wi-Fi hotspot has been tapped at all. It's possible if the suspect had their phone on them, it may have pinged off the Wi-Fi in the residence. Has that been checked on at all?
As I stated, our investigation is looking at every avenue of every piece of.
That question that woman asked was a couple of days after the murders. That was really a brilliant question that she asked. And I don't even know if the chief at that point had any idea what she was even talking about. However, this is really fascinating evidence, this electronic evidence that puts the perpetrator in the house. If they have that evidence, it's extremely, extremely powerful. I don't want to use the term smoking gun. It seems that many people that follow true crime, they don't believe any evidence is powerful. But this is powerful, powerful evidence. Mike.
Yeah, the electronic evidence, since it doesn't come from human judgment, it's computers generating this stuff, so it's not tainted by human emotion. And as a witness statement might be, DNA evidence, that's powerful stuff. It's all scientific. It's all electronic. And if, as Ashley Banfield said, may, you got to keep those terms, qualifying terms, if and may. If you do have it, and it may have turned on from his hip pocket, and the Bluetooth has got it registered as being present in that location, that is a beautiful thing for the prosecution. That is absolutely terrific. That's almost like I hate to use the comparison, but it's almost like electronic DNA, a version of DNA. How do you explain that sort of thing? That would put Kohlberger in a corner, in a real box. But keeping our fingers crossed that it did get a good reception and it did register his phone at that location at that time. That would be really powerful.
Absolutely. Phil, you got a comment?
Oh, yes, I do. The standard in the criminal justice system in the United States is beyond a reasonable doubt. So the prosecution is going to put forth, let's say, his cell phone either being present in and around the time of the murder, let's just say for argument's sake. So now defense is going to say, well, just because the phone was there doesn't mean that he was there. And then prosecution might counteract with saying, well, the phone was never reported missing, different things like that. So again, it's got to be reasonable. And to me, it's very reasonable if Brian is in possession of said phone, has never changed phone, didn't report the phone missing, and the phone pings at the location, that's his phone. So to me, that's very reasonable. So we have to get to the standard of beyond a reasonable doubt. And a lot of the evidence that we have seen put forward meets that standard, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. If you like real crime from a police perspective, then you're in the right place. We deliver it from NYPD veterans that have worked these type of cases before. And what we ask is just, if you like this show, go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, ring that bell, share us with your friends and your family. And also, if you want to support us financially, we have a Patreon with 3 different levels. You see the folks in the green font. That's our YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel has 5 different levels, and the folks in the green font are all subscribers to our YouTube. So this is Police Off the Cuff, and we just appreciate our channel is growing, and we try to cover these cases and not sensationalize them. It is amazing, some of these things that evidentiary, how far we've come in the last 10 years, 15 years. When we spoke to Barbara Butcher, who frequently goes on Duty Ron's show, and I always refer to her, she's the retired chief of staff of the New York City Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. She said because of 9/11, DNA technology advanced 3 generations. That's amazing. You'd hate to see another horrific attack on our country for something like that to happen. But during the 9/11 attacks and the afterwards, science advanced 3 generations in just maybe 5 or 10 years, which is just incredible. And we are reaping the benefits now of those things in our current investigations. Mike?
Yeah, necessity is the mother of invention. And when you have an attack like 9/11, and you have all of the issues with corpse identification and things like that terrible that you have to go through and try to notify loved ones. You've got to put, you put everything aside. That becomes priority number one. We see this with combat medicine in Iraq and Afghanistan for our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines. That is important. Necessity drives invention so fast. And that has been leaked into criminal justice and used by criminal justice. And that's a great thing. It makes it gives the ability for the police to really ensure that there's less mistakes made and that the person that they have in custody is surely the right one.
Absolutely. MMA admin, it doesn't add up because we don't know the complete story. You've heard us say a million times, we're not privy to the case folder. We're not privy to one of the most important things, and either is the press, the interviews and interrogation of witnesses, the tips that were called in, the eyeball witnesses that saw certain things, the woman being interviewed who has the car on video from that gas station. There's so many different pieces of evidence. The interviews, the search warrants, we're not privy to anything. You're right. We're trying to fill in the blanks, and we don't have all the blanks to fill in. Basically, what we're doing is we're conjecturing a lot with, using some of the evidence that we do know. But you're right, MMA admin, we don't have all the information. Phil.
Billy, I think that once we do get specific things like the autopsy report, which we talked about in the beginning of the show, things like that are going to start to make all the pieces of the puzzle kind of fit together. And, listen, there's going to be challenges in court. There's going to be challenges about whether or not police officers and detectives disturbed the crime scene or, compromised evidence and different things like that. But when you sit down and you can explain it in plain language, like, officers rushed into the scene to try and give first aid to victims that may have still been alive. So again, that's how a footprint could have gotten there from one of the law enforcement officers. However, once you've established that there is a major crime scene, everyone is obviously, everyone's checked to see if there's any signs of life. No, everybody's pronounced dead now. EMS is removed from the location. Everyone dons a Tyvek and the booties, and you try to go through it methodically, but there's going to be contamination by first responders, whether you like it or not. It's just one of the things that happens. It's just one of the cause and effect of doing an investigation. So is there intentional contamination of evidence? No, there isn't. Is there accidental? Yes, accidental because they had to walk in to check a pulse and see if a victim was still alive or not, or different things like that. So, and again, sometimes you can just, you're in and out of the location, you take off the booties, you forget to put them back on, you walk in, boom, now there's another shoe print. And someone points it out, you put it back on, but it's too late. You've already gone back in and you may have brought something in or taken something out or left a footprint, like I just said. So things like that are going to happen, especially in such a high profile case as this, with so many different agencies responding. And, there was a big cry for help in this investigation because it was a small town. So again, like I said, none of it's going to be intentional. It's just going to be there. And that's just the fact of it.
Folks in the chat, I just want to let everyone know, you could say whatever you please as long as it's respectful. The only time
we encourage that.
The only time we mind is if someone gets disrespectful, and not just to us, but to the other people in the chat. Everyone is entitled to their opinion, And if I see something glaringly incorrect, I will correct someone in the chat, but hopefully in a nice way. I'm not looking to put someone down or pretend that I know everything, because I don't, But just realize, as long as you're respectful in the chat, we have no problem with it. Ashley Banfield had a FBI expert on electronics, and he spoke a little bit about what we're talking about tonight. Let's listen to a little bit of it.
He's also a former prosecuting attorney. Mwah, chef's kiss. You are perfect, Clark, for this.
Huh.
Get me sort of on and off the ledge on this, because I always want to know that there's lots of evidence. If you're going to bring a guy in and charge him with quadruple murder, I want to know that there's lots of really good evidence. This would seem like it would put a guy right in the room alongside the DNA on the knife sheath. But why might it not work? Let's just look at the other side. Why might this not work?
Right. So your phone, as you know, when you're walking around with it, it is trying to talk to the rest of the world any number of ways, right? Bluetooth and your cellular antenna and near field communication. but it doesn't necessarily mean that those attempted handshakes that you just referenced are necessarily being recorded. Not every single action that your phone takes is necessarily going to stick with that phone. If a forensic examiner were to look at it days, weeks, months later, yes, that handshake could have occurred, but is there going to be a record of it on the device that a forensic examiner can pull back?
Okay, so let me take that one step further, and I'm going to just be, full disclosure here. I am a complete idiot when it comes to this stuff. I have to hit all the buttons 100 times and then reset just to get something to work. But I do know this, my phone is connected to my Bluetooth speaker, and my phone knows when I go from portrait to landscape, and it keeps that as a record, as I learned in the Murdoch trial. What if
Yes.
Kaylee's speaker was connected to her phone? Because presumably they're all up on the third floor, right? You're going to have your
Right.
phone upstairs when you go to bed, even if you're 50 feet away in the other bedroom. Will that perhaps keep a record?
That would keep a record. And so have you ever noticed, you'll spend a night in a hotel and you'll not come back to that hotel for months, and then you'll go back to that hotel and it will automatically connect your phone back to Wi-Fi like you'd been there the day before. Your iPhone does keep a record of what Wi-Fi networks you've connected to, certain information about those networks, the name, the password, the last date and time, importantly, potentially for this case, the last date and time that phone was connected to that.
So amazing, right? Potentially, Mike, I hate to use this expression because I overuse it, a smoking gun,
Potentially.
potentially, right? And
Potentially.
as
Nothing
Ashley
guaranteed.
Banfield talks about what an idiot she is with electronics, so am I, And if I have any problem with the Bluetooth, it's that I can never connect to the damn speaker, And
I
then
have
you're talking
I have a sound stick, and when I go to play music while I'm exercising, it's been connected, and when I walk away, it disconnects, and when I go back, like the next day to work out, I have to reconnect it, manually reconnect it by hitting the button, And so there's a possibility that, as the gentleman, the FBI agent said, that it may not actually have recorded an attempt. We hope it did, and it may have, but let's keep our fingers crossed that it did. But there's no guarantees. In this case, there's no guarantees. I'm sure by this point they've got all that information. They're sitting on it, and it may be brought out at the like the autopsies at the probable cause hearing. That's going to be a treasure trove of information for the public on this case.
I think one of the most important things to know, though, is if the phone is totally turned off, game over. It's not going anywhere. It's not going to hit. It's not going to hit a cell site.
That's right.
It's not going to hit the Wi-Fi. It's not going to hit the Bluetooth. I'm
Mhm.
talking about if it's turned off, not put in airplane mode.
Right.
The phone is physically off. It's
Bill,
not gonna
Bill, I
help us
beg
in
to
any
differ
way.
because I saw a thing on television. There are ways, even 100% turned off, as long as there's power in the battery. Now I'm saying when the phone goes dead, that's dead. Can't send out any signals. But if the power is turned off and there is a battery, every now and then it gives a little charge out or a little. It looks for a cell tower. I did see that. And I will confirm that for sure, 100%. And I believe it's only on certain smartphones. But when you have the phone, like they have Brian Kohlberger's phone, there's a treasure trove of information, like Mike just said, inside that phone. They will dissect every place that phone has been with regard to connecting to Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. And like that, I think it was a CIA agent or FBI agent, what he said is that it'll remember it for the next time you go back to that location. I've had that happen to me where it remembers the Wi-Fi when I went in a restaurant or whatever it was the next time I went there. So again, even in turned off mode, I'm 99.9% sure that it still can. What they did was they took a cell phone, they walked around Manhattan with the cell phone on, and they were able to get without making calls, an exact mapping of where the person went. Then they turned it off and they did the same thing, and they were able to come up with several different locations on the same route that person took with the phone. So even in the turned off mode, it sends out like what they call a trickle signal. It sends it out every once in a while. As long, like I said, is that there is power in the battery.
Well, I'm thrilled to hear that. I thought that this FBI agent that Banfield was talking to said if the phone's off, it's not gonna ping. It's not going to hit the. But you know, if this couldn't happen, look, I'm no expert at this, so I'm not going to argue it because
It doesn't
I don't
give
know.
a steady, in other words, when your phone is on, it's constantly connecting to the closest cell tower. And sometimes if the cell tower is overloaded, it'll send it to the next tower down, like in a place like Manhattan. I'll use a big city. But the bottom line is that when you turn it off, it's not sending that constant signal, but it does send what I believe they called it a trickle signal. And it's not, it's like intermittently sent out. So again, we would need a cell phone expert. He obviously seems to be a cell phone expert. Maybe he didn't phrase it the proper way, or I think it was only with certain models like the Samsung and I believe the iPhone. That's the two that I remember from the thing that I
Well,
saw.
Lorraine Lawrence in the chat is saying, I don't know what her background is, but she's saying, you're right, Phil, as long as the battery is powered. So
Good.
I learned something new every day. I hope you're right. Sharia Keo, let's send Phil some Valentine love if we don't need anything for that's great.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
MMA, imagine if that home had a rear camera or front face. I'm not sure this crime would have happened. It did. There was a rear camera, and he was
It was
caught
a Ring doorbell, I believe, too.
Yes, he was caught, or not him, the white Hyundai Elantra was caught driving up the block and parking behind the house by that camera. So, you know, as we put these little snippets of evidence together, you know, there's a lot for a defense to try to create doubt on. Mike?
Yeah, you know, the defense attorney has to do their best to just point out the presence of some reasonable doubt. In this case, you know, we're always looking at it from the police and prosecutor's point of view. And when we had Mike Vecchione on, you know, he was twisting our heads around a little bit, you know, because he was coming at us from a totally different perspective. But that's a good way to analyze the evidence in a very objective, nonpartisan manner, because, you know, we're always looking at it from one point of view. But each and every little piece of evidence for the prosecutor is going to lead to a conclusion that beyond reasonable doubt that he committed the crime. And the defense has to try and answer each and every bit of that evidence and cast doubt. You know, you can cast doubt on many of the items of evidence that the prosecutor might have, but there's going to be some items that are irrefutable. A Ring doorbell picture, DNA, the cell phone evidence, those sorts of things are really difficult to counter. So the more little bits of information the prosecutor has, the greater likelihood of a conviction.
You know, Mike, I just wanted to mention one thing, and this is in regards to DM allegedly seeing the killer, or who she thought may have been the killer. And this sort of flies in the face of some of the new stuff we're learning now about she thought there was a party and this guy that walked by was at the party. But then she made a statement that she thought this could have been the killer. He had bushy eyebrows. He had a mask on. One of the things I've learned in my police career, and I used to teach identification procedure at the criminal investigation course for the NYPD for 6 years. I wasn't an academy geek. They would bring me in off the street whenever there was a criminal investigation course, which was 2 weeks long, and they would bring me in and I would teach the course. And one of the things I know about identification is you cannot sometimes see someone's face, but you can see their gait, and that's spelled G-A-I-T, and you can see the way they move. And there's something about them that would enable you to identify them. I'm not saying it's not scientific and it's not legally allowed, but I bet someone could pick someone out without necessarily seeing their whole face by looking at the whole person. And then if you ask the person, what was it that made you identify, it would be hard for them to tell you what it was that allowed them to identify that person without seeing the face. Phil, you're shaking your head.
The reason I'm shaking my head is because there was a homicide case that I was involved in about 2016 where a perpetrator was spotted on video. The video didn't show a picture of his face, it showed the general description and stature of the individual. They brought the perpetrator's wife in and they played the video and they asked her, do you recognize who that is on that video? And she said, yes, and she named her husband. So again, that was very powerful. This is the guy's wife saying that, yes, that is a picture. That's a video of my husband. He wasn't firing a gun or anything like that, but he was walking just before the murder took place. And then they showed some video of him leaving, running away, and they showed picture of his vehicle. She was able to identify all three of those videos as being her husband. So again, is it beyond a reasonable doubt? Jury's mind it was. He was convicted and sent to jail.
Mike, what's your thoughts on that?
Oh, I agree. I remember being as a little kid, hearing people walk down the flight of stairs from bedroom to the kitchen, and I could tell if it was my brother's gait, from the cadence, my sister or my dad or my mom. Everybody has a different way of walking, a different cadence, different weights, how they come down the stairs. Yeah, that's you can't. It's hard to quantify it, but there's a quality to it that we all have that individual way of doing things. Our mannerisms, the way we walk, the speed with which we walk, our voices, our the language that we use, particular words in particular circumstances, accents. All of these things are something that people use to identify another human being, not just the face.
But Mike, being an attorney, how could the prosecution use that in a case like this?
Well, I'm thinking about it for as far as DM is concerned. Yeah, her initial impression might have been, and I have no reason to doubt that she wasn't telling the truth and as being as accurate as possible. From her perspective, she actually probably in her mind thought this was some really weird person that was part of some sort of party or messing around walking out. Did he seem a little strange to her? Yes, but she didn't think enough of it. Later on, she realizes, oh my God, that must have been the person, because that's the only who did the crimes, because that's the only person I saw at that time actually leaving the location. But as far as the accuracy of her recollections, yeah, it's going to be affected by alcohol. But I don't think anybody has to think that she's telling nothing but the truth as she saw it at the time. And a prosecutor, I don't think will have a problem with it, explaining it to the jury and letting her explain to the jury what she was thinking. Not at all. She's a 20 or 21-year-old girl, a very young lady. I think anyone on the jury that has teenage children or young children would completely understand the mindset in that from what DM was saying.
Mike, I think also that one of the things that all listeners have to realize is that there's no doubt in my mind that the defense wants to interview her prior to the trial.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to make it understood she can refuse to be interviewed by them. She doesn't have to let them interview her, which I mean, if I was a witness in a case, I would refuse to be interviewed by the defense, especially in a case like this. Whether she was advised of that, I think she was probably advised of the fact that they didn't tell her not to talk to them. They just said you have a right not to talk to them.
Yeah, I think Mike Vecchione made that point when he was on the show, that if you tell them not to talk to them, that would be prejudicial to the defense. So again, she has the right to not talk to any investigators from the defense team. And I think that they would probably, based on the gag order, strongly advise her, do not talk to the press in any way, shape, or form. So again, you have the opportunity to talk to the defense team if you want to, but I would think it would be advised not to talk to them.
100%. Phil, why don't you do this quick commercial for Joe Murray?
Joe Murray, attorney at law. Have you found yourself in a jam? Are you in need of legal counsel in the New York area? Do you need a victim's advocate? Well, Joe Murray is your man. He's not only an experienced trial attorney, he's also a retired 15-year member of the NYPD. He literally knows both sides of defense. His website is jmurray-law.com. His telephone number is 646-838-1702, or you can email Joe at joe@jmurray-law.com. Joe is a big supporter of Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories, and he is a terrific criminal defense attorney. If you're in need of his services, you have his numbers there.
Folks, one of the things we actually spoke about it, Mike and I, the last time we did a show, was that Brian Kohlberger was in hot water at the Washington State University. In September and October of this year, he had basically been warned by his supervisors. He had a TA position, that's a teaching assistant position. And all of that stuff seems to be connected. The funding he would get for his PhD program, his housing, and the money he was paid as a teaching assistant, he depended on that in order to continue his education. Except it became very clear that he wasn't living up to his end of the bargain. And the administration had gotten lots of complaints about Brian Kohlberger, specifically in the way he treated females differently than he treated males. He was a little bit harsh. He was strange. So this was in September and October. We all know the murders occurred November 13th, and he wasn't fired from that position till December. However, this cauldron was heating up, and it's potentially could have been one of the reasons that the whole lid blew off the pot, and what occurred on November 13th occurred. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, looking back at the timeline, he arrives in August. Within 4 weeks, there's no honeymoon period with his students. Within 4 weeks, these students are going to the faculty and administration and complaining about his harsh treatment and dismissive attitude towards the students, especially the females. He's spoken to twice by Dr. Snyder, who was his supervisor. They spoke twice in middle and at the end of October. He actually had what they call a confrontation with Dr. Snyder, probably part of my language, a pissing match. And Dr. Snyder, said, "This is it. I'm going to drop the hammer. You're on a probation right now. You have to be much more of a professional teacher. You're a better researcher. You have your own courses that you're taking in addition to teaching other courses." So he had a full plate, and it seemed to be that, he was really just decompensating. And my working theory is that him looking at his future at WSU, he knew it was not bright. Once they put you on like a probationary sort of, period, he probably realized that he might get fired by the end of the semester, or maybe the latest at the end of the spring semester. And right around that time, we believe in the end of October, he started to follow a direct message, perhaps Ms. Gonsalves. Then the homicide occurs November 13th. He comes back to school. He's still doing his duties. He has a third confrontation with Dr. Snyder. And like 2 weeks later, while he's a suspect and nobody knows yet that he's going to be arrested, on its own initiative, WSU faculty decide to get together, and they're like, we've had it with Mr. Kohlberger. He doesn't listen, and he's not professional, and we can't continue to fund him, fund his position, fund his studies here. And so it's quite interesting, the parallel between getting there in August and leaving and being fired in December, and the decompensation he has with the public around him, especially the females. And the working theory I have is that by killing females, he killed symbolically the people who were he believes were killing his chances of success, once again being rejected, especially by females. And this time it was going to completely destroy his dreams of being in a PhD program. I doubt if you get fired from a PhD program that you're going to be accepted into another PhD program. And that's a working theory I have right now, is that the two working together just seem to have ended up in that one night of extreme violence.
Mike, one of the things, and you're a college professor. I taught college for 10 and a half years. One of the things, that everything you say in a classroom, basically you're on stage. Mm-hmm. And if any of your students disagree with what you say, they take the little walk to the president of the college's office or your supervisors above you, and they complain about you.
Sure.
And I'm sure people complained about me. Some people said I fooled around too much. I was told too many jokes in class, you know. And I was like, well, that's my style. If they don't like it, there's other teachers that are more serious. And I was serious, but I used humor to try to get the lesson plan across. And I know, Mike, you're much more we both taught together. You were a much stricter teacher than I was. You were way stricter, and that came back to you, didn't it?
Yeah, there are times when you ask students to, dig deep, try to think hard, and then you explain a concept to them, and then you take this concept and then you try to explain it in a way that's more concrete. You talk about criminal law, so you'll talk about a particular concept, mens rea, actus reus, criminal activity, that sort of thing. And then you try to give an example from your career, and and then when you're talking about, criminal defenses, you try to ask students to see things from both the prosecutor's side and then also the defendant's side. And sometimes they don't want to do that. It's difficult because you're dealing with young people who don't really have a grounding in criminal law or law, any kind of law, and you're asking them to see both sides of an issue. And sometimes you have to use a little humor because as police officers, that's how you survive sometimes out on the street. You have to have maybe what they call like a black comedy sense of humor just to get through some of the crime scenes that you go through.
Mike, we use that even with perps. We would make them laugh, so they don't kill us. Instead, you would try to make them laugh. Use all your instincts. That's why when I took acting classes, so many acting teachers says, "You're a cop. You should be a natural actor because that's what you do." And they're so right. You do use everything you have to keep yourself safe. And whether it's acting or humor or whatever you use in film, it's true.
Absolutely, 100%. I just want to get a little more specific. I agree with everything that Mike said. I just want to get a little bit more specific regarding the September 23rd, 2022 verbal altercation with Professor John Snyder. There was a meeting held with WSU officials to discuss. Now, listen to this statement that they make. The norms of professional behavior, that he failed to meet the conditions required to maintain his funding. So again, that's September. He's put on notice. Now, we had the other two interactions back in October. And then just 11 days before the murders take place on November 2nd, 2022, prior to the killing, he meets with department officials again to discuss an improvement plan. That's 11 days before the murder. This may have been the thing that really set him off, that set the wheels in motion to commit these horrible and heinous murders. And again, in December, the professors informed him that multiple female students feel uncomfortable. One incident where BK followed a woman to her car. Again, it's just a whole litany of things that took place prior to, I call it the precluding facts. And then we have the facts that happen after the murders take place. Again, you're getting a sort of a rundown of what may have been going through Brian's mind prior to all of this horrific crime that took place.
Absolutely. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. If you're not subscribed to us, go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, ring that bell. If you want to support us, we have a Patreon with 3 different levels, and we also have a YouTube channel membership with 5 different levels. And you see the folks in the green font, they support our channel. So the termination letter that he got in December was well after the fact. The murders had already been committed. However, Brian Kohlberger's life was falling apart as he knew it. And he also, let's face it, I believe he's mentally ill. He had some mental health issues, definitely. And if a normal person's world starts falling apart like this, I don't think they're going to go out and kill 4 people. They may take it badly and they may take it harshly, but they're not going to act out and kill 4 people. So he had some serious mental health issues.
The mental health issues to me are, if you can rationalize committing 4 horrific murders, you're mentally ill. I mean, he might not be considered insane where he's unable to perceive what the difference between right and wrong is, but he was able to rationalize in his mind that he's going to go out and commit these murders. Perhaps he was targeting just 2 of the individuals and then the other 4 were collateral to the whole thing. But to rationalize that, you have to be pretty mentally ill.
Absolutely. JC, as said earlier, the only story that the public has been told is the state story. We have never heard DM's story from her own mouth. We cannot truly say what she said or didn't say right now. JC, that's correct, but the statement that she gave to the state, as you say, is written down and it's memorialized. So that statement will be read in a court of law, and she will also undoubtedly testify if this case does in fact go to trial.
There very
Mike?
well may be a video historical notification. You know, they may memorialize that with a videotape too, as well, which happens a lot of time in homicide investigations. District Attorney's Office wants to memorialize the interview with a videotape. So especially a key witness in a case like that, I think it's very possible that there is a video of that. And, listen, at the moment that the police are first called, it's complete, total chaos, frantic, panic. Traumatic incident has just taken place. So later on down the line, when a person has been made to calm down and is able to go through the story with investigators, that's when they would videotape the statement.
Mike?
Yeah, regarding DM, yeah, we don't know yet. She'll be a witness, I'm sure, at the preliminary hearing, probable cause hearing in June. And I don't think that the defense would be able to score a lot of points with the judge at that time, because there's only going to be a judge in the courtroom judging whether or not there is probable cause. And the same thing at trial. She'll come across, at the worst she would come across would be a confused young woman who didn't act in a way that more older, more mature people might have thought she should have acted. But the defense would have to tread very lightly, because if you think she's an ineffective prosecution witness, you're not going to say much to her as a defense attorney. If you think she's a great prosecution witness, you still have to tread lightly, because you don't want to anger the jury. And even after she gets on and off the stand, then you're going to have the police officers come, the first responders come, you're going to have the medical examiner people there. So even if she doesn't seem to be the sharpest, consistent witness you could hope for, there's going to be so many other witnesses that are going to be placing Kohlberger there. So I don't see anything wrong with DM's statements at all. They seem confused. We don't know what they are, but in June we'll know.
Pauline Robb, can a defense attorney subpoena a witness from the prosecution side or just across during trial? Well, a defense attorney doesn't have to subpoena. They could just give their intention of interviewing such and such witness that is a prosecution witness. If it's a witness out of left field and the person doesn't want to appear in court, yes, they may have to subpoena that witness. But if it's a witness that the prosecution already has on the witness list, Pauline, I believe there's no necessity to subpoena. And Attorney Mike there is shaking his head, so I got one right.
There you got it. Yeah, defense attorneys have the right to issue subpoenas for documents and people. But if someone is, and then any witnesses that come in on the prosecutor's side during the beginning of the trial, the prosecutor's case in chief, the defense always has the right to cross-examine them. And the prosecutor is also, before the witnesses get there in court, the prosecutor is going to probably give the defense attorney the list of witnesses that they plan on calling in a particular order to be even more fair to the defense attorney. So, yeah, the defense is going to have the ability to call, cross-examine, interview all those witnesses.
Absolutely. Paul, was it the FBI or the PA State Police who saw BK dump trash into the neighbor's trash? Do you believe that this act was caught on film? I believe it was probably the FBI and the PA State Police, and I would probably heavily guess that it was probably videotaped with a powerful camera from a distance away, because apparently they also had a drone above that house that was filming the house. So yeah, I think they have it. They have all of those things covered, and I think that will also be pretty damn powerful evidence.
You show up on a surveillance of this nature, you're going to have a video camera standing by and ready to go. And the minute he comes out of the house or anyone appears from that house, you're clicking that video camera on. I would say that that's a very good bet that the FBI or the Pennsylvania State Police did have video surveillance going at that location.
Someone, Frank Marsha, said, "Bill, you're almost as good as Joe Murray," and that's without the law degree. Thanks, Frank Marsha. Appreciate that. Joe's going to have to. He's going to have to get all the money back from his student loans to get that law degree. You know, it's no joke. You know, the knowledge that you get, and I know, like, Mike is so humble about it, but studying to get a law degree, I mean, you probably spend at least the first year never going out because your nose is always in a book and trying to memorize cases and facts and circumstances. But that's what really exercises your mind. Rote memorization. There's something to that. And when it seems students in this day and age, and not to criticize them back in my day, but it seems like students now, they don't want to learn by rote. They don't want to have to memorize stuff. And, you know, even on our promotion exams, sergeant, lieutenant, captain, it was all rote memorization. And that is the most horrible type of studying to do, but it's necessary. And it actually commits to your mind, and especially if you use things like acronyms. Like Professor Dr. Debbie Goodman the other day thanked me. She said, "Bill, thanks for BARD." And I go, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Beyond a reasonable doubt." She goes, "All my students are using it right now as an acronym." I go, "Oh, really? From this show?" I felt so proud.
I love it.
So, Mike, is that true that students don't want to learn by rote anymore?
I think at the college level, they don't have the way things are taught nowadays in grammar school, the primary education. They don't seem to do that as much from what I could see. So when you get to them to college, they have difficulty memorizing things, and they're not because they're not used to it, you know. But yeah, the first year of law school, that is overwhelming. You're just drinking coffee, you know, cups of coffee this big, Pepsi's, liters of Pepsi. You look like a raccoon with your eyes, or, you know, well, because you're not sleeping. But you know what? It's great basic training, because at that point, the second and third year, you're really doing a lot more. But that first year, it's overwhelming.
You know, Mike, I remember to this day, in 6th grade, our teacher made us, every single kid in the class, made us memorize "If" by Rudyard Kipling, that poem. And we had to stand up in front of the class and recite it. And it was so much, you know, if you can keep your head about you when those around you are losing theirs and blaming it. I mean, that's the only thing I remember to this day. But and I remember this girl went up there. I won't say her name because she's probably still around. And she just starts looking at everybody, and she just burst into tears. and then she didn't have to read it. I was like, I'm going to try that one too. Maybe I won't have to read it either.
What's the name of it, Bill? What's the name of the poem?
It's a very famous poem, "If" by Rudyard Kipling.
I got to check
very,
that
very
out.
famous poem. Yeah,
that'll be my homework for tonight.
It's not a short poem either, and it was not easy to do. And I did do it, but it was a struggle, you know. And I think that later on, years later, that helps you that in your life that you were forced to do something like that.
You know, Billy, a lot of the legal stuff that we are, I would say, pretty much professional on is stuff that we've learned over the years. But once you're starting to get into the stuff like Professor Mike was just saying, Sergeant Mike, about the mentoring and this and that, that's where I kind of get into the weeds a little bit. But, you know, from our experience of working with prosecutors, making arrests, going to trial, all the criminal stuff. And then, like you said, we learned something new every day. We learned about phone technology today that we didn't know about, and all the different things. But I did notice that before I go on the air, a lot of times I write out notes, specific things. And like you said, it's in my memory because I wrote it out.
And look at Legal Eagle. She's given us some notes here. Issue, law, application, conclude. Does that ring a bell, Mike?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I remember briefing cases. You know, I used to use the FIRAC method: facts, issues, rules, analysis, and conclusion. There's all kinds of acronyms, and I had like 5 different color markers: one for facts, one for issues, one for rules, one for analysis, one for conclusion. Oh yeah, those were the days. Oh yeah,
Mike.
Mike's
when
starting to sweat. He's starting to sweat.
Oh,
Get out the big coffee, Mike.
It's
when I was teaching, I went over the concept of forfeiture, and the kids were like, "What is forfeiture?" I go, that's when they take your shit. So every time I brought up forfeiture, someone in the back would go, that's when they take your shit. I go, well, that's not really what forfeiture means. But, yeah, I took that as a definition. I go, all right.
That's the street version of forfeiture. They took my shit, man.
Forfeiture is when they take your shit. So I should have been slapped on the hand. And that's probably why they said Cannon fools around too much, He plays too much, they used to say.
Bill, I got to tell you, from all the courses that I went through on the job, the people that were too serious, they kind of, you zone out. Maybe not go to sleep, but you zone out. When you have a little bit of levity and you have a person with a personality, given the given the course or given the speech, it's a lot easier to follow along.
I always felt that using humor in teaching was huge. And it was kids you kept, even when I taught the criminal investigation course at the police academy, people loved my stories and they loved when I made them funny. And they would be like, I was myself and this female lieutenant, every single time we taught at CIC, we were voted number 1 and number 2 of the best instructors at CIC. Every single year I was there. So humor does come into it. Yeah, humor comes into it, and it keeps
you engaged because you're waiting for the next funny thing so you can laugh. Yeah, everybody loves to laugh, so
absolutely. Folks, we sort of got off track a little bit, but I think it's important to keep you guys interested and tell some stories here. And Cynthia Gaines, thank you for the $5 super chat. Sergeant Bill, we had to memorize and recite the poem "The Road Less Traveled" by Robert Frost. Wow, that sounds like. I know the name of the poem. I don't know the poem. And I think that, I did a monologue in my acting class, and it was a football movie where Al Pacino plays the
coach,
the head coach, and he talks to the team. And the monologue was like 3 to 5 minutes long. We fight for each inch. In this team, we fight. It was one of those rah-rah speeches. And I did it. It was like 3 to 5 minutes. Maybe it was more like 4 to 5 minutes long. And it was really hard to do. And actually, if you watch the Super Bowl, Serena Williams did that little speech in that commercial. That was from that monologue. It was a little snippet from that monologue. I recognized it right away. But when you can do it and when you can memorize, especially when you're older, which it's much more difficult to memorize stuff as you get older, believe it or not, you lose a few brain cells. And you sort of feel good that you memorized all of that stuff. And it's not, when you memorize something in an acting class, you're not just reciting it, you're acting it out. So it's that much tougher to do. Guys, I hope we didn't disinterest you by getting off track a little bit, but this case is fascinating, and we're going to stay with it right till the very end. And we have the most respect. We always have to mention, and I'll put it on the screen. Phil, you can recite it.
Yes, Madison Mogan, 21 years old, Kaylee Gonzalez, 21 years old, Ethan Chapin, 20 years old, and Xander Kernoodle, 20 years old. May their souls rest in peace. There is no Valentine's Day for the families of these young students that were taken way too soon. Just keep them in your thoughts and prayers. We've mentioned BK's name several times, so we just feel it's fitting to be a little serious at this point and mention the names of the victims of the University of Idaho. And may they rest in peace.
Absolutely. Mike, final thoughts.
Yeah, just for all the viewers, just to be patient with the case. We're going to see a lot more in June. Have confidence in the FBI, the Idaho State Police, the Moscow State Police, and keep the victims and their families in your prayers.
Absolutely. Folks, I want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight, especially on this Valentine's night. I hope you had a good Valentine's Day or night, and that you gave a hug or a kiss to your loved one. And thanks again for tuning in, and God bless.
Stay safe, everyone. Valentine's kiss.
One episode just ain't enough.